Alright, let's begin. Welcome to creating a virtual PC virtual machine and installing Windows Server 2003 Part 1. We're going to begin by starting Virtual PC and creating our first virtual machine. We just crank up Virtual PC. It'll automatically, if you haven't created virtual PCs, VMs before, you'll go right into the wizard. You just click Next, and then select Create Virtual Machine. Give it a name like Server 1. Later on we'll be creating additional servers, so putting some kind of number in the name will be helpful. Click Browse, and by default it will put it under your C drive under a folder called My Virtual Machines, which is underneath My Documents. Click Save, and click Next. And choose Windows Server 2003. This is just setting up some memory and hard disk space values. It'll give us plenty of room to work with. We want to create a new virtual hard disk as well. It'll put it in the same place as the virtual machine file and give it a default size. So just click Next here also. Now that we've created the virtual machine, we're going to start it up. And since there's nothing to run, we're going to have to mount the ISO file. This will be the Windows Server 2003 Enterprise ISO that you downloaded from the MSD and Academic Alliance site. So browse around till you find the ISO file. Double click on it, or select it and click Open. This will immediately start the install process for Windows 2003. You'll go through several seconds of a blue screen as it does some hardware inventory and copies a few files around. When it says Setup is starting Windows, we want to then press Enter to begin installation. Press F8 to agree to the licensing for Windows. We want to create a partition in the unpartitioned space, so we click the letter C for Create. Let it use the default, which is the entire space. Press Enter to create the partition, and there you have it. Now let's press Enter to install or begin the installation process. We want to do a format of the partition, but we want to change it to the quick format. This will only take a few seconds, as opposed to the other one, which can take several minutes. So change it to select quick format, press Enter, and the formatting process for the newly created partition will begin. It should only take a few seconds. This will depend a lot on the speed of your processor. It's going to copy a few files onto the newly created partition in preparation for rebooting onto the newly installed operating system. And then the virtual machine will automatically reboot itself. Make sure to not press any keys so that you don't boot back to the ISO file that you mounted earlier. And this will let the Server 2003 operating system go ahead and boot up. And so now begins the somewhat lengthy process of file copying and various other operations that Windows will perform as it installs. After several minutes you should get a screen that looks like this. Regional settings, just click Next. For name and organization, just type your full name or the name of the server, Server 1, something like that, doesn't really matter. And click Next. Now you have to type in the license key. This is the same key that you found when you downloaded the ISO file from the MSDN site. If you didn't get it when you first downloaded it, you can go back to the MSDN site and it will show you the license key number. So just type it in, as I'm doing here. And when you're done typing the number in, click Next. Change the number here to 999. Click Next. Change the computer name to Server 1. Make sure to keep this simple so that you can remember it later. And the administrator password, I recommend you just make ASDF, something that's very, very easy to remember. This would be the home row keys underneath your left hand. Type the same password twice and click Next. And it's going to tell you have a very weak password, but that's okay. Click Yes. Change the time zone to Central Time, which is around -0600. Click Next. It's going to go through and try to install the networking components, and there will be some additional settings we have to make to the virtual machine in just a few minutes to get to complete this process. Now we take the typical settings and click Next. Leave the workgroup settings alone and click Next. It's going to do some more copying and configuring. And once this is complete, it's going to reboot itself. Again, do not press any keys. We don't want to boot from the CD now. We want to boot from the newly created partition, disk partition. And there comes Windows Server 2003 splash screen.